The second strategy requested in the example is level strategy using current number of workers combined with overtime and lost sales. It is a lot similar with the first strategy. The only difference is how to calculate the unit needed. 4 workers still used to calculate the regular production for every month, and as we discussed it in the video before, lost sales won't be added into the calculation of unit needed. Like the previous video, we just have to calculate the regular production first. Don't forget to use round up because the example stated that we have the assumption of rounding up the unit produced in regular production and then in overtime production and also in the workers needed. After that we can copy it until May. And the unit needed is the same for the first month. We only have to subtract the demand with beginning inventory, and for the second month, because it is using lost sales policy, so it only needs demand minus inventory from the previous month. After we have the calculation for unit needed and overproduction, it's time to calculate the overtime production, inventory, and lost sales. Still with the same policy. If the same, then overtime is 0, and then inventory also for the first month is 0 because the regular production unit is the same as unit needed. And then lost sales also 0, there is no lost sales. But in the second month, overtime didn't have to be taken because the regular production is bigger than the unit needed. But there is some excess of production that have to be held in inventory. Regular production minus, and there is no lost sales for February. In March, as you can see, the unit needed is a little bit bigger than regular production. Also, we have to calculate the unmet demand for March. It is not the same with this first strategy. And for the maximum capacity overtime, so let's round up 4 times 8 times 30% times the working days in March divided by the production time for 1 unit, and we have 48. Still, there is an unmet demand or lost sales. Because the unmet demand is bigger than the max capacity overtime. And we just enter the number like so. Inventory is 0, and here is lost sales. As you can see, it's different with the first strategy. In the first strategy, unit needed in April is 134, but in here it's 129 because there's no back order, only lost sales, and lost sales didn't have to be accounted into the unit needed for the next month. So here we have the overtime production should be in the max unmet demand in April is 129 minus 128, and for max cap overtime in April, just to round up, 4 times 8 is 30% times the number of working days in April divided by production time for 1 unit and 0. Okay, the max capacity for overtime in April is 39 unit, but the unmet demand April is 1 unit, so we use 1 unit just for overtime. Is there any inventory? No, because the regular production and overtime production has met all the demand needed in April, and then there is no sales. In May, there's no need for overtime because the regular production is bigger than unit needed, but there is inventory. Excess inventory equals to regular production minus unit needed, and there is no lost sales in May. After we have calculated the production unit, we can move on to calculate the production cost. First, like the first strategy, is the regular production cost equals to numbers of worker times working hours times the day in 1 month, and then times the regular time cost. We can log some of the cells, so we can copy to May. And then the inventory cost is equal to the number of inventory or ending inventory in the month times the inventory cost itself, and just copy it through May. For lost sales, it's also the same like back orders. Lost sales cost times the number of lost sales that is occurred. Like in the previous video, overtime cost can be calculated by 2 formulas depending on the capacity that we use in the overtime. So, like in April, the overtime cost is using the formula how many units is produced in overtime times the hours that is needed to be produced, the unit, and then times the overtime cost. But in March, because we use maximum capacity of overtime, so we have to calculate it based on how many workers that is spending their overtime to produce the unit maximally. For the others, because it's 0, so we can enter 0. And we can see the total cost is 32,451. With this strategy of level with overtime and lost sales, giving the cost of 32,451, is it better than the first strategy, level with overtime and back order? In the next video, we will discuss about how to calculate with the third strategy, which is level to fulfill the minimum order and combine with subcontract. See you on the next video.